Look at this gorgeous Ord River. We have been flying over the Kimberly. We have been fishing all day for barramundi. We've come out with the goods and now it's time to cook it. And it doesn't get any better than this. I mean, we've got the beautiful red rock, we've got the sun setting, we've got a hot Weber barbecue, and I'm going to teach you how to cook barramundi and whole fish foolproof every single time. I promise you this is going to be the most delicious and tender fish you have ever eaten. It's really simple, it's foolproof. Let's get started. Okay, your first step is to get the Weber barbecue super hot. What we want is a 230 degree oven, and that's what we're prepping our Weber to be. So please get it hot, get it ready before you start cooking. So when the food goes on there, you've got the heat in there and it's going to retain that heat and cook your meat or your fish perfectly every time. So while that's heating up a little bit more, we're going to start prepping our food. I'm going to get a brown rice tabbouleh happening. So our first step to a brown rice tabbouleh is to cook our brown rice. I'm just going to throw it into a little trenier pot. It's going to go into our oven or our Weber, and that's just going to tick along, and we're going to have some delicious fluffy brown rice to go with our beautiful barramundi. So into our pot or trenier, we're going to go in with about a cup of brown rice. To that, we're going to add some water. You could use stock if you want. So 2 to 1. From there, I'm going to add some garlic. So I'm going to flavour this rice with some aromats. So a little bit of garlic, a little bit of chili, just like that. It's going to go straight in there. Garlic clove, I'm just going to give it a good crack. So flat side of your knife, let's give it a bit of a thump, and you're just going to bruise it, skin and all, that's going to go in there. That simple. And then our rice is going to go on to the barbecue, or if you've got a stove at home, put it on a high heat and just tick it away until it's absorbed and tender, and then we'll strain it off and you're good to go. So straight in there. While that is cooking and ticking away, what we're going to do is we're going to start prepping our barramundi. And I would like to say that I caught this barramundi, but Kev caught the biggest barramundi of the day. And you know what? And this is going to sound really mean, I'm sorry Kev, but Kev can't even fish. First cast, he pulled out a metre long barramundi and he set the tone for the day, and none of us caught up. But that's okay, it's a part of the fun. Okay. It is a big barbecue, but it's an even bigger barramundi, which is such a beautiful sight to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do the barramundi tail. So I'm going to literally cut it straight through. It'll be a beautiful cross section, and the flesh inside here is going to be really, really nice. And we're going to do a salt crusted barramundi, and what that means is we're going to completely cover it in salt and a whole bunch of flavour, and then cook it in the Weber. So we need the Weber to be really hot at about 230 degrees. So we've fired it up, it's nice and hot ahead of time. If you're at home, just set your oven to 130 degrees and follow this recipe just as I'm doing it, and it'll turn out perfect, I promise you that. So our first step is we're just going to cut straight through the cross section of the Barra. We're going to reserve this for later on, and then I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful salt crust. The scales and the skin are going to stay on, because once I remove that salt crust, that skin and scale is going to come with it. And that's another thing that's so great about this recipe is you don't need to scale your fish, you don't need to skin your fish. It's an all-in-one recipe, which is so epic. So with a sharp knife, I'm just going to go straight down. I'll just remove some of them. So I'm just going to use a sharp bread knife to cut through the bone, straight through the other side. And that's what we're after. Just the beautiful cross section and the tail of the barramundi. So we're going to salt crust that, and it's going to go on the barbecue. So now that our barramundi tail is prepped, I'm just going to put it on a plate, and we'll start with our salt crust.
What could you do with the leftovers?
Oh,
what do you recommend?
Eat it as ceviche, roast it off. You could do this exact same recipe and do it instead of 3 parts. You could also just fillet it and just do beautiful sort of crispy skin barramundi. It's one of my favorite ways to have it. Salt crusting, so easy. So easy. But what is so great about it is you're kind of seasoning your fish from the outside in. You're creating like a bit of a cave that the fish sits in, and when you cook it, it means that all of that moisture and flavour circulates inside that cave and you don't lose any of it. So the end result is a fish that is true to its natural flavour and so so tasty. But what I love about this recipe is it's so easy, you know, and it's so impressive when you crack that crust open in front of your guests. It's like a show. The steam comes out, the fish is tender, and you can pretend like you've spent hours in the kitchen, but actually you've spent like 25 minutes at the most whacking it together, throwing it in the oven, and like happy days. Honestly, that's how cooking should be. All right, so first step is we're gonna add some flavor into our salt crust. So I have some lemons and some oranges. I'm gonna rind them directly into this salt, making sure you get all of that beautiful, fragrant rind, and doing it directly over the salt so you catch all those beautiful essential oils that come out from citrus. Once you kind of get the hang of this recipe, you can add whatever flavors you want. You know, you can marinate the fish and rub it down with beautiful spices and then salt crust it. You could rub it in curry, which would just like, the flavor would blow your mind. We're also gonna add some egg whites in here as well. So straight into the salt, onto our citrus with your egg whites.
Just don't drop the yolk.
Just don't drop the yolk. And if you drop the yolk, it's actually not a big deal. It's not like we're making souffles here. So the egg white is going to help bind this salt crust. It's going to help create this beautiful cave that's going to hold in all that flavor and moisture once it sort of hits that heat of the barbecue. All right, so you're trying to bind everything together, and what you want to look for is like a consistency that you'd make the perfect sandcastle. So it's sort of just binding together, just sticking together.
A little wet sand.
Yeah, a little bit, but not too wet, because if it's too wet, then you're not going to get that that crust. So there'll be too much moisture. So you really just, you know, just as it's starting to come together. So I'll also add a little bit of water to that. Sorry, Kev. Not a set amount, just a little bit at a time, like I said, until you come to that consistency. Recipes are great, but as soon as you learn a recipe, you know, you can really get in there and start to feel it and make it your own. It's about that, you know, that touch, the smell, working with the senses to create, you know, something delicious and to share it with awesome people. So get in there. At this stage, I can get my hands in there. So that's pretty close. Oh, it smells so good. So that's what you're after, like a sort of sticky sandcastle mess, and that's good to go on top of our barramundi. It looks like a lot of salt, and that much salt is definitely not healthy, but you're not eating the salt, you're creating you know, almost like a clay casing for it. So all that's going in your fish is flavor. It's not going to be uber salty, it's not going to, you know, ruin your palate. It's more of a flavor enhancer and more of that that cave effect that we're going for. So this is going to go down, just use your hands, a nice base of salt. You're gonna love this recipe, it's so good. All right, so our barramundi tail is gonna go down on top of our salt, and that already just looks really cool. From there, we are going to add salt directly on top. So we wanna cover it completely, so lots of salt is needed. And you know, the only thing you really need to remember about this salt crust is two things, and that's the texture of the salt and that you have enough salt to cover whatever fish you're cooking with. How awesome does that look? It's such an impressive recipe, but don't tell anyone because it's so damn simple. That's good to go in the barbecue or the oven. So you want a hot barbecue or a hot oven, about 230 degrees, and then that's good to go in. That is about a kilo worth of barramundi, so a kilo worth of fish. So this is going to go into our nice and hot Weber. I've set the barbecue up to have a direct side and an indirect side, and what that means is you have a side where all the coals are pushed, and that's the direct side of the heat. It's sort of gnarly and it's hot, and that's creating all the heat that's going to be circulating inside this Weber with the lid on. And then you're going to put the fish on the other side, so it's a little bit softer, it's not so gnarly, and it's not on that direct place where the heat's coming from, so not on the direct side of the coals. So this is going to go straight in there. You don't want the lid off for too long because you want the heat to stay in there just like an oven. So lid back on. Now that our fish is in the barbecue and in our oven, I love to serve this recipe with a really light, fresh, healthy, and acidic salad. So there's no better salad than a tabbouleh, but this is a Bondi Harvest tabbouleh. I'm using brown rice, and the reason is, you know, brown rice is really good for you, but it also has the most amazing nutty and delicious flavour. So that's why I'm mixing it together. So we have a beautiful cup and a half of brown rice. We then have a whole bunch of parsley, lots of citrus, some garlic and some chilli for heat. And then I've got some cherry tomatoes sort of mushed up. They're going to be folded through. I'm going to serve that with our barramundi. So you have this beautiful, sweet, soft, textured fish, but then you have like acid and crunch, and it just rounds up those flavors in the most amazing way. Okay, so our brown rice is beautiful. It's nice, fluffy and tender. And we're gonna mix it through our tabbouleh mix. Easy, job done. Let's get our beautiful barramundi out.
It's hard to keep grounded when the city's bleak, especially when you grew up on a trampoline. But I pay close attention to young and old, and I drag my tongue behind me, taste the side of the road. I wanted to see you take face to face, shake my hips to the sound of the bass, 'cause the months are rolling on, my heart feels sore. I didn't come to love to see the people bored.
How awesome has the Ord Valley Mustard been? From Bondi to the Kimberley, this place is honestly breathtaking. You have to come and visit. I'm gonna watch the sunset, enjoy my barramundi. I'll see you back in Bondi.